to the Spring Valley Bank YouTube channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. This is our second episode, if you will. We opened up last week. We had a number of people watching, and we appreciate, hopefully you've returned for the second episode. Last week, as you recall, first let me introduce ourselves real quick before we move into that. I'm Remo Loreto. I've been here with Spring Valley Bank for 3.5 years. I'm a licensed realtor as well, and I'm a consultant for the bank, trying to help investors achieve and exceed their goals. This is Beska. She's also with the bank. And Beska, why don't you tell the viewers a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. I'm Beska Fairbanks Hunt. I've been here with Spring Valley Bank coming up on 1.5 years, and I am also a licensed real estate agent.
Thanks, Beska.
Thank you.
So I thought what we would do is touch on what we did last week. We talked about the application process a little bit. We talked about the history of the bank, talked about our own backgrounds and so forth. A lot more generalization than last week. I thought this week what we would do is concentrate on flips. One of the interesting things, or one of the things that happens when I talk to especially an aspiring investor, one of the first questions I'll ask them is, so you want to be a real estate investor, what has piqued your interest in becoming an investor? And, I get various answers. They have a friend or a relative who's done it, and, they just want to get into investing. And so one of my next questions typically is, so what is your plan in terms of real estate investing? Are you thinking in terms of doing a flip, or are you thinking in terms of your first project being a buy and hold? Mm-hmm. And often what I'll get is, I'm not really sure. I just know I want to get into investing in real estate. And that's fine. I understand that. But let me tell you my perspective for you, the aspiring investor. If you don't know which way you want to go and you want to get involved in this business, my suggestion would be to start with a flip. And I have a very specific reason why. Here's what's going to happen when you get into your first project. Doesn't matter whether it's a flip or it's a buy and hold. When you get into that first project, you're going to be in it, and you're going to be a few weeks into this thing, and all of a sudden surprises are going to come up. Your contractor's not going to show up when he said he was. There's going to be a change in the plan because all of a sudden when they opened up a wall, they found mold back there. There's going to be surprises coming up. Things are going to change. You're going to have sleepless nights. You're going to be going, why did I do this? This is crazy. If you did this as a buy and hold, you have 10 years of this. This is your first loan. It's going to be a 10-year balloon loan. You have 10 years of this. Can you get out of that deal? Yeah, you can. But invariably what's going to happen is you're going to lose money. You're going to have to sell the property, and you're going to take a loss, and it's going to be frustrating. If you did your first project as a flip, everything that I just said is still going to happen. You're going to get surprises. The contractors are going to disappoint you. Material costs are going to be more than you thought. The plan is going to change. All of those things. You're going to have sleepless nights. But you know that there is an end in sight. The duration for a flip here at Spring Valley Bank, the term is 15 months. You don't want to go 15 months. You want to go 60 to 90 days. You need to minimize your cost of funds, and that's one of the ways to do it. Right. So you know that there's an end in sight with your flip. When you get done with that flip, you may end up making some money, and you think back and go, yeah, I had sleepless nights. Yes, it was a hassle working with contractors, but I've learned a lot, and I think I'll do this again. Or you may think, oh my God, this was horrible. I am so grateful that it's over, and I am never going to do this again. And so a flip is a good way to start. Understand that Beska and I will support and understand whatever your desire is. If you're a novice and you want to buy a building for rental income purposes from the get-go, we'll support that. We'll help you. We'll lead you. We'll guide you. Our goal here, as I said at the beginning, is to make sure that you achieve, at the very least, if not substantially exceed your goals. That's my goal for you in life. I always approach everything that way. So in talking about these flips, Another big question comes up is, where do we find these properties? How do you find a good deal here? Well, one thing that I can tell you right out of the gate is the marketing director here, Rachel Ann, who is producing these videos, is absolutely outstanding at scouring for opportunities for you, for investors. They're not for her, they're for you. And if you go to the Spring Valley Bank investment opportunities playlist at the Partners of Greater Cincinnati, Real Estate RE Partners of Greater Cincinnati, that is, on Facebook, you'll find off-market properties that she has found for you guys. Now, it's not going to be anywhere near as competitive as properties that are found on the MLS. Can deals be found on the MLS? Yes. But there are things to keep in mind about the MLS. There's a lot of real estate agents who are also investors who are looking at the MLS themselves every day, not only for themselves, but for their own clients. If you find a property that appears to be an opportunity, if you found it on the MLS and it's been there for any length of time, that's been a picked over property. For some reason, no one else has had interest in that property, which should make you a little bit leery of, is there really an opportunity with that property or not? So some of the other places that you may look, Craigslist, you don't find a lot of properties on Craigslist, but there are some. Wholesalers advertise on Craigslist, and I can tell you that one of the things that I've noticed here in the last 6-8 months, we are in month number 8, so it's probably approaching more like a year. I've seen more deals come through that are originated via a wholesaler. And just to answer your question, what a wholesaler is, typically they are a person who is seeking out opportunities, off-market properties. They get them under contract and they'll turn around and sell them to an investor, and they'll mark them up, whether it be $2,000, $5,000. Obviously, it depends on the value of the property, the price range of that property. They'll mark them up and they'll assign their right to purchase that contract to you, the new buyer. So that's another avenue to look, an opportunity to look. Another thing that I tell investors all the time, and this is more for an investor who has bought their first property or has had other properties, but when you do have a property, once you have your first one, it becomes a little bit easier. It's not easy, but it becomes easier to find properties, and here's why. When you have a property that you're now working on, you need to be prepared to go out of your way to interact with other members of that community. When you drive your truck to the site or your car to the site and you see people looking at you, you need to go over to them, introduce yourself, give them your card, say, my name is Remo Loreto. I just bought this house. I'm going to be renovating this house. And actually, here's an opportunity for you to pick a neighbor. If you know somebody that's looking for a property, because I'm going to turn this into a beautiful property for you. And by the way, this is what I do. So if you know anybody that's looking to sell a property, and believe me, that works. That absolutely works. There are investors here that use that do that, and they get leads and have closed deals from that source. So you need to be creative. There is also the yellow letter campaigns, and I really won't get into that. You can look up, Google yellow letter campaigns, and you'll see that. And your question is going to be, well, does it really work? I send out 1,000 pieces of email and I get back 5 responses. Is it worth it? Well, the answer is yes, it's worth it. I know of a couple of successful, they're professional now, real estate investors, and that's their primary ongoing marketing method. And as I said, once they're in, and I'll be specific, I have a gentleman, one of these 2 gentlemen has recently closed on a very nice condo. And there was a draw inspection as part of the process for his rehab money. And I went up to that property to inspect it for the draw inspection. And when I got there, he said, "Remo, yeah, I'm going to be buying the condo next door." They saw me working here and they said, "Hey, we'd like to sell our condo. Are you interested?" So just like that, that's another opportunity. So that's a little bit about the process. Beshka, what would you like to add?
You pretty much covered everything. I was thinking of another additional source would be the county auditor pages, auctions. That's a good way to find properties as well as you were. But you covered pretty much everything. That
auctions are a very good source. And so a typical question is, will you guys underwrite a property that we purchase at an auction? And the answer is yes. However, there's a caveat.
Yes.
There is a caveat with that. And that is, you need to have a plan B. If you buy a property from an auction, you need to have a plan B. Here's why. And I mentioned this last week, and I won't get deep into this, but I will tell you, there are two parts to this, two facets to an approval of a loan. One is the borrower. And once you go through the pre-approval process, you're not required to become pre-approved. But if you do become pre-approved, it is to your advantage. Once you've been pre-approved, you go, ooh, the bank loves me. I know that they'll do a deal for me. But that's only half of the story. You need to then find a deal. And when you bring a deal to the bank, then they're going to evaluate the deal, that property. And the property carries a lot of weight in these approvals. But let's say that you bought this property at auction as opposed to a MLS or a private contract. If you have an MLS contract or a private contract, typically you have an out. It doesn't, there's a problem with the inspection or it doesn't appraise, you're going to have an out. When you buy a property from an auction, I can tell you that the county sheriff is expecting you to buy that property, period. So if the bank would happen to disagree on the potential of that property, disagree with you, and they say, look, we like you, we've already pre-approved you, we'd love to do business with you, no reflection on you, but we don't think this is a particularly good deal. And they turn it down, you're still committed to buying that property. So auctions are a good source. Just be sure that you have a plan B. Another source that has proven actually to be a pretty good source, and it's particularly good for people that are good communicators. And not to say that if you're not a good communicator, don't try it, but the source is probate attorneys. Probate attorneys, you are dealing with an attorney. You're dealing with a professional. They're representing their family whose loved one has just passed. They have properties going through probate. They need to dispose of that property, especially in situations where the next of kin is out of town. The process is we need to move this relatively quickly. And the reason I said the idea of being a good communicator, if you approach them in a professional way, in an intelligent way, and make sense and are realistic, you have a lot better opportunity of interacting with them than somebody is, hey, I see that house is now in probate court. I'd like to buy that thing. That's not going to go real far. So professionalism is going to carry a lot of weight there as well. So what other kinds of thoughts might you have, Beshka?
Networking, getting to know the investor community. I know that thinking of RIA is a good place to meet people, and then not only meet people, but then they can talk to you one-on-one about what properties they have and vice versa. So that's a good place as well.
Let me expound on that a little bit. And that was a terrific mention of RIA. Here's why. If you've never attended the Greater Cincinnati Real Estate Investors Association meetings, they're outstanding meetings. What you have, depending on the topic of the night, you could have anywhere from 50 to 250 people present at the meeting, depends on who the speaker is going to be. One of the things that they allow investors to do when you're attending there, if you have a property to sell, they give you a minute or 2 minutes. They give you an opportunity to line up, and everybody gets a chance to go up to the podium and say, hi, I'm Remo Loreto. I've got a property in Coreyville that I'd like to sell. The configuration is 3-bedroom, 2-bath. You can give the address if you want, say however much you want. And if you're interested, see me after the meeting. And in the meetings that I've attended, I've seen that to generate a lot of interest. Very, very effective way of having people all of a sudden swarm you and say, oh, hey, the property in Coreyville, I'd like to talk to you further about it. So that was a great mention. I'm glad you brought that up. So what other things might we, Rachel Ann, you're producing this. do you have some great thoughts for us that you would like us to share? Or are there any questions that have come in?
Yes, we actually have a question from Westchester. It's just the initial S, wants to know if you go on the MSL site and for off-market properties, are there realtor fees involved?
Good question. You cannot, a regular consumer does not have access to the MLS. You can go to various sites, Sibsy Klein and my own broker, Prodigy Properties, and I'm sure Vesca's broker. All of the brokers have their own search facility. So you can go there and you won't be limited to Prodigy Property sites. You'll be able to search the MLS. But in terms of having the ability to go behind the scenes like a licensed realtor can and have access to the even further information, you won't have that. In terms of realtor fees on off-market properties, typically there are not, but there could be. And one of the things that comes up with off-market properties, and I tell people this all the time because people do talk to me about, Remo, I want to sell my property, but I want to avoid realtor fees or whatever it may be, the way they approach me. Here's the one thing that I tell people that are going to sell a property themselves to be prepared for. And that is a realtor is going to call you and they're going to say, look, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, I have somebody that's interested in your property. Do you co-op? And what they're actually asking you is, will you pay a commission? Typically, it's 3%. That's the seller's choice. They can say no. They can say yes. They can say, I have a certain bottom line that I am looking to achieve. Anything above that bottom line, I'm more than happy to pay a commission. You can handle that how you want. But in a strict no off-market property, strict, there are not real estate commissions involved. Any other questions?
Yes, we have a question from Terry over in Green Township. She wants to know typically how long does a property renovation take? How much time? Are you able to, I guess she's trying to ask if she has a job, would you recommend doing a flipping of a property part-time?
I definitely have some strong feelings about this, but Beska, would you like to answer first?
I throw a little bit in there. I was just going to say it's very situational. It depends on the property itself. As far as having another job or doing something else, I would strongly suggest working with a contractor that you know and trust, and that you know that's going to replicate and give exactly what you want every time. And then that way you can trust that while you're doing your day job, that your contractor is going to be doing exactly what you want them to do. I feel like it's a trusted relationship you'd have to have with your contractor in order to accomplish what you need. It can be done, but I think it depends on your trust level with that contractor.
Yeah, Beska's absolutely right. In the first episode last week, and I'll say it again very briefly here, there are two really, really hard parts to this. I call them hard part 1A and hard part 1B. Hard part 1A is finding a property that's appropriate. Hard part 1B is finding a contractor that does what he says, when he says, how he says, at a price he says. That trust factor is really, really difficult. And when you find somebody that matches all of that on the vendor side, the contractor side, you need to keep them because they're very, very hard to come by. There's no question about that. Now, with regards to doing this on a part-time basis and how long does it take, it absolutely depends on the scope of the job. I mean, if you're doing a condo, and I like condo flips, and we have some people here that are successfully doing them. If you're doing a condo, obviously it's going to be a much shorter process, a much quicker flip. It might be a good way to get started. But here's what I will tell you. And I tell folks when we would have we used to do lunch and learns in this conference room, and I would tell folks, you need to be prepared when you close, the day that you close, you need to be prepared to go to work. Now, I know that sounds funny. Like, I just bought this property, I'm just closing. I want to celebrate. Well, here's the problem. Every single day, these are interest-only loans. Every single day is costing you money. So when I say that, there's a little bit of kidding in there, but it's more serious than kidding. You need to go from this conference room, the closing table, to the property, even if it's just beginning to get the trash out or whatever it may be. Every day you need to be working. You also need to do as much of that work as you possibly can yourself. Doesn't matter what your skill level is. Almost everybody can paint. And almost anybody can pick up trash and get it out. Almost anybody can be a gopher for the contractor who says, hey, Remo, you know what? I need 4 pieces of 2x4, 8 feet long. Could you take your little minivan and go pick up? Almost anybody can do those kinds of things. You need to do as much of that as you possibly can yourself. It's called sweat equity. And I talked earlier about minimizing your cost of funds. That's another way to do it. Do as much of the work yourself as you possibly can. So yeah, it can be done part-time, but as Beshka said, you're going to have to depend on people to be there when you're not. So they have to be someone that you trust. So I hope that answers it, but I'm more than happy to go further if you'd like. Is that okay? So we've taken enough of your time. We appreciate you hanging in there and tuning in with us. You noticed that today we're here on Friday. Typically these sessions will be on Wednesdays. Yes. So thank you for coming today. We'll look forward to seeing you next week. Until then, we'd like to ask you to check out the Spring Valley Bank YouTube channel for the Friday flip of the week. And I'm sure that Rachel Ann has one for you today and to catch these live stream series in the future. Thanks a lot. Have a good weekend. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys. Bye.